truly miss that sharing the things I know and sharing my adventures, my experience. But
A wheeze was the initial sound, very understated. No respect for a man who had made it through 70 winters in Alaska. Just a little hiccup in Otto Kilcher's breathing, silent, defiant, and easily disregarded. However, by the time anyone paid attention, it had progressed beyond a simple cough. An artery in the chest of a guy who had been engineered to resist the environment was silently collapsing. The pain medication under his coat, the restless nights, and the partially swallowed expressions were never captured by Discovery's cameras. Otto is the only one who would use the same wrench to repair a broken tractor and a dying heart. But that's only the start. The genuine anguish? It was the unedited, raw, and never-to-be-read-on-camera version of Otto's diary entries. A wheeze was the initial sound. Very understated. No respect for a man who had made it through 70 winters in Alaska. Just a little hiccup in Otto Kilcher's breathing when he assumed nobody was paying attention. It had progressed beyond a cough by the time he allowed anyone to examine him closely. A man who could outstubborn a snowstorm had an artery ticking like a time bomb inside his chest, and it was like a slow-motion collapse. Moreover, the program withheld this information from you. Discovery showed Otto welding in the snow and herding cattle, but they omitted the parts where he slept poorly, carried pain medication in his coat pocket, or had the camera crew and Charlotte exchange silent glances as he tried to push through it again. Otto is the only one who would use the same wrench to repair a broken tractor and a failing artery. Yet, the genuine anguish? No, the diagnosis wasn't it. It was the secret note he left behind in his notebook afterwards. Somehow, this will alter your perspective on every scene in Alaska. The last frontier, going forward. Born to pioneers. Yule and Ruth Kilcher in Switzerland. Otto was the sixth of their 12 children. He spent his childhood on a farm about 11 miles outside of Homer, Alaska. Imagine a world where you, a wood stove, and the unspoiled Alaskan tundra are your only companions. With no electricity, no hot showers after a chilly morning, and no 6 o'clock lights. Living off the grid, completely independent, and only a wrench away from extinction, that was Otto Kilcher's reality. Otto could fix everything, according to Homer rumor has it. He could mend a leaking roof or a broken tractor and still have time to skin a moose before supper. A log cabin, no matter how sturdy, will eventually show its age. In 2016, Otto's renowned endurance finally ran out of steam due to hernia surgery. You wouldn't believe what he said later on. When the doc had to sew that groin area, I could actually feel the tugging. A guy who once braved cold conditions to wrangle wild cattle is now scowling on an operation table. If he had continued on as if nothing were wrong, would the agony have been ignored? How that moment changed things is something we'll discuss later. Some discomfort is inevitable, isn't it? This look into his frailty suggested that he was hiding larger problems. Whenever the seasons went on, spectators could see Otto wince slightly whenever he paused for a moment amid chores, as if he was uncomfortable. These few moments hinted that the man who could outstubborn a snowstorm was confronted with obstacles that couldn't be remedied with duct tape and resolve. At the end of season 11, though, Otto's body had had enough, and the last frontier has never witnessed a more terrifying health war. When a storm is really intense, does it feel alive? When Otto Kilcher's life turned upside down, he was there. He goes from being the man who can make a tractor out of scrap metal in an instant to being lying face down in waist-deep snow with the impact of an ox's hoof on his ribs. With each breath, he feels as if shards of ice have broken through his coat and into his lungs from the cold. During the whole whiteout, No one on set saw that they were on the verge of filming his last scene. Just imagine, you're making your way home in a snowstorm, relying on the knowledge that hypothermia and frostbite are your primary dangers, only to have one of your own creatures crush you. Even though Otto is Alaska's unstoppable handyman, the border retreated more forcefully than everyone had anticipated at that very time. Guess what? Discovery's cameras were rolling, until they stopped. I am still unnerved by the trailer for He Might Die from Season 11. Envision Otto, laden with oilskin and wool, tripping over knee-deep drifts while the wind whips at his hood. Paramedics are shown tripping on the ice as they approach a lifeless figure. A subsequent picture shows his footwear sinking. "We've got a patient critical." The teaser hisses, but by the time you switch channels, Discovery has already shifted to Jewel singing in the cabin, and there's no voiceover, just the fury of the storm. That tease was the most bizarre thing ever. Their method of interment for the guy. In the middle of the whiteout, Otto made a split-second decision that almost cost him his life. In the midst of a snowstorm, a bull lost sight of its own horns and bolted like a locomotive out of control. I've witnessed tractors that were destroyed by less forceful impacts. What about his bulky outerwear and gloves? Totally pointless. The impact of that animal's hoof on his ribcage was so powerful that it fractured bone. As he collapsed to the floor, you could practically feel his breath seize, as if someone had snatched his wind. Can you imagine attempting to move an ox off your chest? Yes, Otto did. Before conceding defeat, he will wrestle a rusty engine. However, the most irascible mechanic from the frontier finally faced his equal, and the ox came out on top in the opening bout. Early warning signs of hypothermia were evident in Otto's hoarse moans that broke through the whiteout. Minutes before, the homestead's Wi-Fi had gone down. No SOS, no backup strategy. Instead of calling the crew camp, a nearby resident noticed a bloodstain in the drifts and radioed for help. In what seemed like an equal measure of heroic rescue and careless risk, emergency medical technicians in fur-lined parkas rushed into waist-deep snow, frantically trying to remove him from the ox's hoof prints while slapping frozen gloves to their jackets. A duct-taped splint was quickly constructed for Otto's leg after they firmly wrapped gauze around his shattered ribs. As time passed, he felt the ice creep closer to his lungs. The blades of the helicopter whirled up like a funeral chant as they hoisted him onto a sled, carrying him toward the one possible location where he may be able to stay alive. Silence descended upon Charlotte's world. The camera feeds showed her hands flapping against the wall of the hospital corridor as the screen went dark, and her face was illuminated by a strong, fluorescent light. What do contemporary families do in times of crisis? Avon and August sent out texts to everyone. Avon commented, "Dad's hanging on, but it's touch and go." Fans responded with prayers, speculations, and suspicions that the program will turn this into another prank. Otto, meanwhile, lay on a gurney with tubes in every possible opening, limboed between realities. It was all a nightmare, and if he'd blinked harder, he may have been back at home with the wrench in his hand. But none of that was included in the final version of He Might Die that aired. We just got a brief card instead of raw hospital footage. Otto is getting medical treatment. That is all. There is no indication that he spent 5 hours under the knife. His morphine-induced dreams intensive care unit companion goes unmentioned. Discovery hid the ox mauling, which was supposed to be the season's worst revelation, like a terrible chapter they didn't want people to see. Similar like Otto, existent in myth, but non-existent in fact. Even though he made it through the blizzard, the beast and the helicopter journey unscathed, returning home was no picnic. One that was born out of the people he abandoned. Oh, and that price almost broke the Kilcher family apart. The farm descended into silent uncertainty following Otto's collapse. A disturbing silence replaced the usual reverberation, with his hammer striking metal as trucks sat idle where his toolbox had been. Until Avon and August broke it, no one dared. They looked it in the eyes. As if it were second nature to him, Avon was carefully and slowly draping fence wire over his shoulder, just as he had done 100 times before. August was also out there, walking the herd and addressing the cows by name as if it would help him speak without fear. It was fear, I'll admit. Dad would have had this herd through the pass by noon, Avon said, his tone betraying his true feelings, truly terrified. No, this wasn't your average day at the farm. It has never happened before that Otto wasn't present to spearhead the attack. His son and nephew, both young men, seemed more like little boys suddenly, cast in the shadow of their famous father. Upon hearing a steer kick at the gate, Avon recoiled in fear. August struggled to maintain line speed while his hands trembled. What happens to this family when Otto isn't there to keep everything together? Every sound, from the metal clank of a chain to the bellow of a cow, sounded like an unspoken query. Within the confines of the cabin, Charlotte fixed her gaze on her phone with the same eerie expression she had wore the day Otto failed to emerge from the snowstorm. Then, with a steady hand, she revealed her secret to the world. According to her, this episode will be difficult for us to watch and relive. The actual blood and tears of a devastating time for us on the homestead when Otto's life was hanging in the balance, which cuts through the Discovery Channel's polished exterior. There were no edits or subtle transitions, just the honest facts. This wasn't a promotional piece. Rather, it was an impassioned call for empathy and an unusual confession that the normally unflappable matriarch was showing signs of emotional weakness. However, what really happened was that everything was under wraps. Whispers on Reddit conveyed a different story than what viewers saw in the celebratory tags like "Kilcher Clan Keeps Going" and "Happy Expressions." The RR television community was abuzz with speculation that the wrench swap wasn't the only thing happening between Avon and August. Rather, they were vying for screen time, with each man intent on proving he could manage the homestead flawlessly. "It feels staged," someone commented, like producers panned the lens to whoever swallowed his pride last. Another actor claimed to have overheard truncated conversations that were chopped before the final edit. "I can do cattle drives without Otto's play-by-play." But they never made it into the finished product. The gossip quickly spread, elevating a private family issue to the level of a public spectacle. Despite the noon sun shining through the open doors of Homer's coffee cafes and general stores, the voices within were quiet. Heard what Charlotte had to say? As he mixed cream into a broken cup, a neighbor inquired. "She's been through hell and back." Meanwhile, across town, a modest online petition was amassing signatures, requesting that Discovery respect the Kilcher's right to privacy while Otto was healing. News of ambulances, uncertainty at the airfield, and worried faces in the emergency department was sent by locals by text message. When your sleepy little town becomes the setting for a smash reality program, the lines between truth and television become so blurry that even those who had never known Otto felt they had lost a friend. The producers were on a tightrope. A positive aspect is that ratings increased due to Otto's labored breathing. In contrast, allegations of exploitation were looming in the background of Charlotte's near breakdown. They had to act quickly. As Charlotte cried into her hands, the cameras drew back. But soon they were focusing on August, making a joke about a broken milking machine. The teaser included audio clips from Otto's hospital room, with his coughing sounding like a warning siren. but Charlotte's Instagram plea was deleted from the final version. Even fewer people saw the visible pain in August's and Aven's eyes as they patched a roof and nailed down boards, respectively, as the Globe marveled. During a crew evacuation, the Kilchers used their iPhones as improvised cameras to capture themselves. However, even that material was edited down, striking a balance between the brutal honesty and the perfect presentation that reality TV requires. The house had already changed by the time Otto limped back to the porch, cane in hand, face pressed against his skull, but still maintaining that defiant half-grin. August's eyes were more fixed. Charlotte, Aven had wider shoulders. Just like a queen welcoming her jester home, she was pleased to have him return, but it was never the same. The instruments he had given his loved ones had shaped them into something stronger, yet also more susceptible. They had filled his boots, unearthed the lonely pain underneath the myth, and exposed the flaws he had fought so hard to conceal. The audience sat tight the whole time, split down the middle between applauding the family's resiliency and furiously criticizing the show's editing tricks. Some felt more connected to the Kilchers than before, while others, scorched by the rumbling of unseen horrors and suppressed weeping, felt further away. It was never only about ranches or cabins. It was always about families and how reality TV fared when its foundations crumbled. Otto, the showrunner and anchor of Alaska, the last frontier, began mysteriously vanishing following his near-fatal injury. Gradually, please, without a grandiose farewell. However, reality television has a subtle and unsettling way of dismissing veterans without ever actually saying farewell. When Captain Phil Harris's health started to deteriorate on Deadliest Catch in Season 11, Discovery reportedly began using what industry insiders refer to as a phased exit plan, as revealed in Screen Rant's behind-the-scenes investigation. According to fan-compiled IMDb stats, Otto's screen time plummeted from 22 minutes per episode to less than 5 by mid-season 12. The usage of his voiceovers in instances when he wasn't physically present and the reuse of B-roll footage of him cutting wood from Season 8 both contributed to his ethereal presence. Detectives on Reddit saw a red flag. In Episode 9, Otto's reflection flashes across a vehicle window. Yet that particular kind of truck hasn't been sold in Alaska since 2015. The implication was quite clear. The program could make Otto seem like he was there, but who was the real deal? I could no longer find him. Right away, the change was observed by the fans. According to IMDb's screen time metrics, Otto was in 78% of the scenes in the first 3 episodes of Season 11. Executives from Discovery insisted they were respecting his recovery, but insiders spoke to Screen Rant about creative differences and new directions, which sounded similar. That ought to be the case. Captain Phil Harris of Deadliest Catch was subtly removed from the show following his stroke, but the network paid tribute to him with a memorial episode when he passed away. Speculation persisted despite public remarks from the Kilcher family. In March 2023, fans went internet hunting for clues when Charlotte blogged about Otto needing time to recover. Within hours, the comment area was inundated with over 23,000 responses, analyzing her choice of words. Some pointed out that she had removed comparable articles a few weeks before that documented Otto's rehabilitation progress, a decision that Distractify attributed to production sensitivity. The question then became if this was just a short hiatus or a long-term change. Reddit threads were filled with people comparing Charlotte's captions before and after the tragedy. People were obsessed with her change from "We'll rebuild," "Dad's always been his own man." Whether that includes the show anymore, who knows? During a Father's Day feature meant to celebrate the family legacy, 8 sets deflected with uncharacteristic brevity. leading to more questions than answers. His interview with Outdoor Life continued in a similar vein. The production pause of Season 12 was well-timed, as was the quotation. Rumors even spread about Otto, whose brief appearances in episodes 4-6, consisting primarily of repeated voice over B-roll of his deserted workshop, amounted to only 47 seconds of fresh material. What you didn't learn from the episode was that Otto's declining role had much to do with more than simply his condition. Screen Rant conducted an exclusive behind-the-scenes investigation that revealed Discovery had been secretly conducting audience reactions tests to a next-generation Kilcher storyline since Season 9. Leaked production notes from 2021 show that producers were monitoring Avon's social media engagement, which was 3 times greater than Otto's, with less than 35 viewers. Posts on Reddit referencing younger dynamic Kilcher-adjacent talent from before Otto's accident have revived speculation about a planned generational change. What about Avon's homesteading lessons? Parts of August's wildlife show? It was more like an audition than a tale. The brass wanted a smoother transition, but Otto's injury accelerated it. This is all part of a calculated transition plan, according to insiders. It's right out of Discovery's playbook, just like how Deadliest Catch shifted focus from Phil Harris to his sons post-2010. An anonymous source told Screen Rant that focus groups were even conducted comparing Otto's gruff charm to Avon's relatable dad vibe. However, will Alaska, the last frontier, be able to continue without its obstinate personality? There is no denying the data. With 2.1 million viewers for the Season 11 premiere, a bump that Discovery probably celebrated, the show was hailed as Otto's return. The ratings fell 23.8% to 1.6 million at mid-season, according to IMDb's scene-by-scene monitoring, as Otto's screen time dwindled to brief cameos, just 7 minutes in Episode 6. As an example, viewers of Deadliest Catch saw a sharper drop following Captain Phil's death. No Otto, no watch, and other boycott threats emerged on Reddit, and in a matter of weeks, petitions calling for his return amassed over 15,000 signatures on change.org. Here's the catch. According to Nielsen data, the youngest demographic, those between the ages of 18 and 35, tuned out the quickest, which contradicted the network's assumption that new viewers desired fresh faces. Not even Avon's homestead hacks, which went viral, could save the day. His solo segments experienced a 19% decrease in social media shares when contrasted with Otto's rough tractor repairs. "I don't care about perfect," said one YouTube commenter. "What matters to me is that Otto spent 20 minutes grumbling at an engine that was frozen." In the background, the show's identity issue was intensifying. Screen Rant's insiders said that in order to maintain continuity, producers rushed to re-edit episodes and insert old Otto voiceovers. However, fans aren't stupid, and they noticed that a cattle drive in Season 12 used recycled audio from Season 8. Engagement on Instagram fell flat as Discovery redoubled its efforts to promote August's new generation tales. Is that the point? Content that is beneficial to algorithms cannot substitute a legend. What happens when a reality star like Otto Kilcher disappears from TV, though? Is it retirement or something more tragic? Is this the inevitable development of a family story or the gradual loss of its unique charm? Without the help of a film crew, Otto Kilcher was able to carve out a home for himself in the woods in 1941. Armed with an axe, a gun, and the determination of a Swiss immigrant, he claimed 160 acres of land under the Homestead Act. Even before the workers of the Discovery arrived, his son Otto had mastered the art of hand-mending fences and interpreting snowdrifts like weather maps. The network apparently originally proposed Alaska, the last frontier to Otto, who laughed, saying, "We've lived this life quietly for 70 years. This is the killer part, though. We don't need to air it on television because, with 28 million viewers, they proved their independence mythologized. But, in a cruel twist of fate, they became reliant on the show's attention. By season 3, producers were inventing crisis moments, such as having Otto rediscover long-solved farm problems for drama, as revealed in Screen Rant's exposé, while initially promising a warts-and-all depiction. It wasn't only Otto's ribs that snapped when the bull almost killed him. It was the delusion that television could ever portray the genuine toll of existence on the frontier. The years of quiet Yule spent carrying water from frozen streams. The frozen winters of the 1950s, when the Kilchers subsisted solely on ptarmigan and hopelessness. Reality television strips the same traditions it celebrates of their validity, as Otto's accident demonstrated. It did more than simply endanger a man. It showed the show's fundamental decay. Not only was Otto's mechanical ingenuity entertaining, but it was essential to his survival. A bulldozer could be constructed using dental floss and malice by this man, a talent he had honed over 70 winters in Alaska. Screen Rant's exposé backs up what viewers suspected. Discovery frequently reshot his messy solutions to make them more TV-friendly. The unsanitized part, though, was the way Otto's hands trembled following his injury, clumsily tightening bolts that he had previously done blindfolded. His departure was more than the loss of a character. The loss of Yule's original vision's live blueprint was a devastating blow. There are more than simply physical dangers. The permafrost that has supported the Kilcher structures for many years is dissolving because to the increasing temperatures. According to NOAA, the average winter warmth in Homer has increased by 5.2 degrees Fahrenheit since 1950. Charter flights now drop Instagrammers near the family's hidden salmon streams every day, causing trail litter that Aveen's kids supposedly silently take out. This is just one example of invasive tourism. Logging by corporations? No need to search anymore. The Tongass exemption for 2021 permits 38,000 acres of old-growth cutting within 12 miles from their farm. According to Alaska.org, the original 160 acres of Yule are now occupied by a fortress under siege. On one side, there are homestead experience accommodations that cost $475 per night and are marketed as Live Like Otto. Additionally, every summer, the family's well, which is 80 years old, pumps 30% less water. Quite the shocking turn of events. Although there have been 2.1 million posts using the #HomesteadLife hashtag on Discovery, the number of valid subsistence permits in Alaska has decreased by 14% since 2019. Even the caribou herds that Otto has hunted for decades, the Mulchatna, are disappearing. State scientists have confirmed a 28% decline in one herd. One Reddit user explained it this way: "The show sells a dream that's being clear-cut, paved, and turned into a selfie backdrop. However, the timing of Discovery might be its worst mistake. From 2018 to 2023, when Otto was no longer on television, 14% of Alaskans obtained subsistence hunting permits, a precipitous decline that the state's Fish and Game Department attributes to a lack of adult role models." In his off-camera courses, Otto taught 20-plus Homer youths how to discern moose tracks through spruce woods and how to suture wounds with sinew thread. He wasn't only a TV carpenter. In contrast, in the Homestead Hack episodes of Season 12, Avon showed off several fire-starting tactics that would work on TikTok using ferro rods that he bought at the shop. The Juno Empire referred to these tricks as REI survival, not real subsistence. Shockingly, according to Alaska Economic Trends 2023, the median age of subsistence hunters increased from 42 to 49 during Otto's fall. While Otto's shaky hands struggled with the same repair following the accident, Discovery played repeats of his famous beer can carburetor fix from Season 5, which he had really devised during Y2K preparation. The hunting communities on Reddit took note. "Used to watch Otto to learn," one user remarked. "At this point, I can't help but wonder whether any of this actual information will survive him." Reality TV's deception and reality's deterioration met. Despite the show's framing of Otto's departure as passing the torch, Alaska lost a torchbearer and, along with him, the plain knowledge that sustains frontiers. A mix of optimism and dread permeates the potential of the future generation. When the world that a legacy was created for fades away, is it still possible to inherit it? Does Levi mean the TV-approved version of Otto's methods or the actual ones, the ones with calloused hands, silent battles, and the unphotogenic grind, when he vows to defend them? Yule staked the 160-acre property of the Kilchers in 1941, but today it lies in a county where 62% of subsistence licenses are unused. And it's not because of a shortage of land, it's because of a lack of knowledge. The birch bark gasket repair that Otto famously used to keep a 1957 Ford operating for decades is in stark contrast to the factory-made components that Levi fixes ATVs with on Instagram. The line between preserving and performing was blurred when producers urged Levi to modernize his approaches in order to make them more relatable, according to Screen Rant's behind-the-scenes leaks. The Earth itself is fighting against the trend toward milder winters. Due to a 3.2 Fahrenheit increase in Homer's average temperature since 1980, the ice caverns that Otto formerly navigated now melt by March. The area that formerly belonged to family friends is now marked with no trespassing signs as Levi attempts to follow in his grandfather's trapping footsteps. In the homesteading subreddit, someone has made the scathing joke, "The last frontier's becoming a living museum. Admire the exhibits, but don't touch the tools." With Levi's promise to keep it going, what exactly is he promising to preserve? Even if the program is still airing, the raw, uncompromising, and authentic wilderness that Otto conquered is disappearing at a rate greater than the show's ratings. What do we owe the storytellers as we watch their lives unfold on screen? And how much leeway do we give them to embellish events for dramatic effect? Did you lean forward as you saw Otto stumble in the snow, ribs broken? That's the terrible reality that Psychology Today captured. Reality shows cause us to reflect on what we might do in a similar situation and what that says about who we are. Got a message from a friend? What was the point of knowing his fate? Well done, you are willingly participating. Reality TV's worst secret isn't the scripted drama, but rather the actual suffering that viewers are willing to watch for entertainment purposes. Wikipedia lists child abuse, trauma mining, and contracts that ensnare players in their own nightmares as ethical pitfalls in the genre. Regarding Otto, though, this is unique. We all stood transfixed by the public health emergency that was his near-death experience, not some narrative twist concocted by the producers. Do you recall the scene where the drone hovered above to capture the ideal wide angle as Otto hobbled through the snow, his lungs failing? Cinematic was the word. Absolutely stunning. Beautiful suffering is still pain, though no one wants to admit it aloud. We, the viewer, are made complicit when producers approve that shot. Editors add that violin swell, and networks schedule it for Sweeps Week. Their winning move was when Otto hurt himself. The bruises were real. The gurney was not staged by him. This was no episode of Bear Grylls when the protagonist drinks pee and checks into a motel. With an arterial graft in danger and a camera staring him in the face, Otto fought for his life. And we saw as he collapsed. A little bit off kilter, but yet near enough to make you feel bad. In due time, He was healed, in a way. Leaving the hospital, his face was more metal than bone, and his expression was unforgiving. But a change occurred at the most basic level, within him, while watching the program, within ourselves. After that, Otto became more than simply another wilderness guru. He became an example to be studied. Reality television regret on display at the Smithsonian Institution. It makes one wonder, how can one convey a tale without crossing the line into surveillance? In the midst of recognizing resiliency and making money off of trauma. There ought to have been a wake-up call with Otto's accident. No, it was the last episode of the season. Rewatching the episode is your task. Give it a go. Get beyond the editing. Tune out the dramatic music. Behold the quiver in Otto's fingers. His dread shows through as his tough guy facade slips for a brief moment. You are not acting. It's true. And maybe, just maybe, you'll realize that he used a butter knife to fix engines. Using only one arm and a rope, he extracted breech-borne calves. However, the spectacle continued even after his body ruptured. The rolling shutters continued. Nothing halted us. Reality television doesn't bother to seek approval. It just waits for the numbers to skyrocket. After that, Otto had already passed into a realm that most of us would never reach. So, if he ever appeared a bit more remote, less silly, more ghostly, it was because of that. Displayed alongside near-death experiences, perhaps there is more than praise that we should give him. Because of the sacrifice he made to provide us with entertainment, we owe him a second chance to see it with fresh eyes. The man's breaking point was being marketed as prime time, making this an extraordinary Alaskan trip. We procured it,